not only is oil bad for people, bad for the wildlife, it's also bad for people. So when I think tankers now, I also think sick people. This is Exxon Valdez again, and this was a high pressure wash that the water, the seawater, hit the beach at such force that it bounced the oil that you saw off the rocks into the air, and people breathed it. So what's on their rain gear is actually in their lungs, right? And people got sick. And we had no idea what was going on. People called me, and I'm a marine biologist, not, people, and I thought the doctors would take care of this, and they didn't. And 13 years later or so, no. First of all, in 1992, because I tracked where the sick Exxon Valdez workers went, and they went to this place in Texas. It was a detox, a decontamination center. And I talked to the doctor there, and he said, "What in God's name is going on in Alaska?" Because he had all these sick workers. And I said, "Well, there's sick wildlife too." And he's, "Tell me what's going on." So when you have sick people and you have sick animals, and they're sick because of the same chemical, that's the strongest evidence possible that that chemical is a problem. And I said, "But it's oil." And he said, "So?" I was just like, oh, what am I getting myself into? But 13 years later, I got phone calls in May of 1989 from fishermen who were coming in from those, what I call a spill response now instead of a cleanup, because there is no such thing as a cleanup. And they were transitioning so that they could fish from being a response worker to fishing, and they were sick. They were coughing. It sounded like they had, a case of cigarettes a day or something. They had rashes, they had red eyes, dizziness. So 13 years later, I actually did some surveys on this. And in the 20 years' time since Exxon Valdez, there is an entire new field of medicine that has come out. There's occupational medicine, which deals with high exposures, usually because of a spill, in a workplace, to the workers. So it's a one-time exposure, high time, that's occupational medicine. It turns out these same chemicals at much lower levels are in our environment, in the air, in the water. And babies are being born now with 200 chemicals in their bodies, just through the umbilical cord. And so there's a new field of medicine called environmental medicine. And it looks at low-level exposures over longer periods of time, where people get the same illnesses as these workers who are exposed to one-time toxic hits, right? So that's called environmental medicine. And I'm going to get into, in a second here, what this field now knows, okay? So this is what was going on in the Gulf of Mexico with the BP disaster. The in-situ burn team, the fishermen who were out, were not allowed to wear respirators. They asked for respirators after I went down. Because I said, why don't you have respirators? In Alaska, our fishermen are trained now in hazardous waste cleanup. They wear respirators. That's standard part of their equipment. We know you need respirators. Get them. They'd asked BP. BP said no. BP said, if you want to wear a respirator, your jobs will be terminated. Because it would look bad in the media. The drill was to keep the Gulf economy going. And you can't have people wearing respirators at the same time as people are swimming. And resorts are open. Right. So here, this guy is a beach clinic where he has his boots taped to his pants leg. And so I did my best tourist impression and went up and said, gee, why do you have your pants taped to your boots? And he said, oh ma'am, the ocean is contaminated. I said, really? Then what about all those people swimming? And he just rolled his eyes. Yeah. So, in the Gulf, the doctors diagnosed asthma and heat stroke and food poisoning, acid reflux, staph infections, sinuses. I was so outraged at this lack of truth with medical doctors. Nobody said chemical illnesses. That I gave away copies of my first book, which is Sound Truth in Corporate Myths. This is about biological impacts to people and wildlife, and I'm continuing to give these away. And the cheapest way to get them is by the pallet, 800 at a time. And 14,000 copies of this book went to the Gulf, all right? But in the end, I think this book cost BP $7.8 billion. Because people were taking this book in and saying, I don't have heat stroke. I have this. Here, read this. You know, and people were challenging their medical doctors, which really doesn't happen in the South, okay? And after 2 years of denying BP, state, and federal government that there was any health problems whatsoever, the medical benefits settlement includes $7.8 billion for medical treatment, medical monitoring for 21 years, a series of community health clinics across the Gulf, all staffed with experts in environmental illnesses. Yeah. I'm not saying that it's happened yet, but it looks good on paper, okay? Yeah, so this is, so you saw the white sand beach, right, in the previous slide? Here's part of the problem. These beaches that look so beautiful during the day didn't look so hot at night when they were hit with black light, UV light, ultraviolet light. It turns out the Corexit dispersant, and the reason I'm mentioning Corexit is because these same chemicals are stockpiled in Canada to use, okay? So Corexit dispersant bonds with the oil and it fluoresces. Neither one do alone, but when they're bonded. And it turns out this, they're called micelles. Oil in the middle, a little dispersant all around them. They go floating off in the water, in the air, and they bind to biological tissue. So think sand grains all have a coating of bacteria on them. So coated to the sand grains. This is a beautiful white sand beach during the day, and this is what it looks like. That orange is all oil dispersant mixed together. So people were actually walking on this stuff thinking it was okay and saying, gee, I feel like I just have all these nettles on me. I'm just, you know, it hurts, it burns. These symptoms have all been reported in the medical literature from 7 previous oil disasters as common symptoms of oil exposure. All right? It's respiratory problems, so respiratory problems, sore throat, the hoarseness. It's central nervous system problems, dizziness, nausea, lethargy, fatigue, brain fog, headaches, and then it's blood disorders and it's skin problems, okay? I saw people with skin and hands, skin peeling off their hands and their feet. Children waking up in the morning with their pillows covered in blood from bleeding through the ears and through the nose. I mean, it's still to this day happening. This is not something you get better from. This is something you have to learn to live with, is basically the deal. So, here's the thing. This oil that fluoresces at night gets hot during the day, leaches down into the sand, and where it gets a little bit cooler, it reforms. And so here you have a nice little layer of oil, about 9 inches or so down underneath the surface, right where children can dig. The cleanup, the spill response crews were told to dig to 6 inches, right? Because BP started finding out that, oh, there's a problem if you dig deeper than that. This child, here's the ocean, right here, coming in, you can see the wave. That pit was sampled by a news media team where the water's coming in, and it's sampled really high for oil and dispersants. When I confronted Lisa Jackson, who is our administrator of Environmental Protection Agency, about this little problem with dispersants and people, she said, oh, no. She said, we don't want to create a panic. And I can only think that the panic was about evacuating the Gulf and closing down the economy. What would happen? Who would pay for that? What kind of precedent would that set for future oil disasters? I mean, but it's completely ludicrous to think that you have these guys being trained in hazardous waste cleanup and little children playing on the same beach. No. All right. South Korea, when I was over there 1 year after the Habai Spirit oil spill, the South Korea University presented their results, and they found that people going on the beach as volunteers to do the cleanup, simply breathing the air caused chromosome breaks, DNA damage. And they concluded that children should not be allowed to do oil spill response work. It happened at Christmas. They had by Spirit, and the kids went out to help clean up. I mean, it was just like, hey, you guys would all do it too. Let's go clean up our beaches. We want this cleaned up. And they all trooped out there. And so South Korea says, university says, oh, children should not be allowed because the children don't have the ability to break down these toxic chemicals fully developed yet, as adults do. But the thing is, what if the oil spill comes to you? What if it's in your home? What do? Do you evacuate then? I mean, South Korea couldn't answer those questions. This is now some more of the science emerging from the Gulf. This is by the retired Air Force colonel that's a master's student now. He's the one that's been experimenting with the black light. So with wet skin, okay, like you would think if you're at the beach, you're not dry, you're in the beach wading, you're in the water, wet skin. You take a rag, you wipe this leg, there is nothing visible on the rag. There is no visible oil on this person's skin. When you hit the same leg with ultraviolet light, the sparklies are all dispersant and oil bonded together, being pulled into the body. So this new science flies in the face of the old thinking. For example, the Florida Department of Health said that contamination, this is in 2010, contamination via dermal absorption was highly improbable. This new science shows that it's not only probable, it's very rapid and very efficient. It goes right into your body. Your own Environment Canada is saying that Corexit 9500 is 25 times as safe as dishwashing liquid. This is what our EPA was saying. This is not true. Okay? It is not true. These dispersants carry a lot of the same chemicals that are in the dilutants for the tar sands, all right? They're teratogens, which means they disturb and disrupt the development of an unborn baby, whether it's a dolphin or a human. They're neurotoxins, carcinogens, mutagens, disrupting DNA coding, causing tumors. Hemolysis, which means it breaks down blood inside your body. It breaks apart blood cells. And it's basically a systemic poison. This is just the dispersants. And the problem here now is that our government, this is in the US, came out with the latest science in March 2012, Dispersant Initiative Report, which is a document that guides future oil spill response efforts. And the scientists who are studying human health have concluded that, well, the scientists really need a better understanding of the trade-offs of using dispersants with respect to human health. In other words, they acknowledge, our federal government acknowledges that dispersants are going to make people sick. So what is the trade-off? Do we keep the oil coming? Do we evacuate the population? What do we do? I've been doing this for 35 years in terms of studying dispersants, and I've always seen it framed as a trade-off with the ecosystem, with ecology. We're going to kill things in the water column, but it'll be better than all this oil washing ashore and killing everything ashore too. It's just the ecology. Now we're saying, oh, humans are on the table as well, human health. Vulnerable populations are the children, pregnant women because their bodies are already stressed, elderly people because you're already, you have a higher chance of being contaminated. Let me say that the medical doctors, environmental medicine doctors say that our bodies are like a rain barrel. And all of our lives, drip, 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 toxic chemicals in from air, from water, from whatever. And your body's constantly trying to break this stuff down and getting it out. And as you get older, your rain barrel is more likely to be full, so that if you get another exposure, you'll be over the top and you'll be symptomatic, right? African American folks, I don't know about Native American folks. African American folks, because they're already prone to blood disorders and the hemolysis stuff, so it's like a double whammy. And people with pre-existing illnesses. And what we're seeing in Michigan now, the people who are cancer survivors are having a real rough time with the Michigan, the tar sands oil. So, tar sands oil. Tar sands are, as I mentioned, concentrated in the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, the ultrafine particles that are long-term bad actors for human beings, as well as animals with a backbone, okay? Birds, fish, mammals. There is an ebook called The Dill Bit Disaster, which is really worth reading for those of you who like to read and learn more. This is the Enbridge pipeline, by the way, in Marshall, Michigan. What is coming out of not just the Marshall, the Michigan spill, but now other tar sand spills, is that the tar sands is more corrosive. It's like liquid sandpaper going through these pipes. And the pipes that carry tar sands tend to spill more. So, for example, in the United States, pipes that carry tar sands are spilling at 3 times the rate of conventional oil. If you compare the United States and Alberta, where there's a lot of tar sands pipelines right now, the corrosion, the spills attributed to corrosion in the United States are 9% of our pipeline spills. In Alberta, Canada, it's 46%. It's 26 higher times than the US because of tar sands. Just tar sands is corrosive, okay? They're extraordinarily costly to clean up. I forgot that, I'll get to the dilutants here. And they're more damaging. Why? Because it's not just tar sands flowing down the pipeline. It's tar sands plus something called a diluent, okay? Dilutant. And the dilutants are basically petroleum distillates and or liquid chemicals which are proprietary in nature, which means they're a trade secret, okay? So when in the Gulf, dispersants have a lot of these trade secrets too. And we said, no, we really need to know because people are getting sick and you can't go to your doctor and say, well, I'm sick. The doctor says, what were you exposed to? You say, I don't know, okay? Because it's a trade secret. So when we got the formula busted, it turns out it's a lot of hazardous known human health hazards that the industry didn't want to tell us they were spraying all over our ocean, right, and us. So like dissolves like. With oil, to make oil thinner, you add an oil base, you add a more liquid oil. You don't add water, you add a more liquid oil. So that's petroleum distillates. They tend to be the volatile compounds, so the benzenes, toluenes, xylenes, and they're some of the oldest known carcinogens. Basically, this is like a double whammy. And in Michigan, when this stuff spilled, this dill bit, diluted bitumen, right, it's separated into the heavy tar sands that immediately sunk in the cold water until they went flowing over a dam, in which case they got aerosolized into the air and people breathed them, okay? And it separates into the lighter fraction that's in the air with headaches and all this. Our bodies only have so many ways to say we're sick, and the fact is that the symptoms for chemical illness mimic the symptoms for colds and flu, headaches, all these things that we think is normal, vertigo, you know. In the Gulf, the pharmacies were just selling vertigo medicines, skin creams, and nebulizers, and they didn't know why that had all gone up. Anyway, in the United States, we've so far managed to pass a law in January that basically does not enforce deadlines for repairing pipeline defects while new ones are being built. We still are not repairing the old ones. And it also does not require that the pipeline operators say what's in the tar sands. So, you know, you've got this fallacy that that we think we're getting sick from the tar sands, but when you say to prove it, we don't know what's in it, so we can't. It's all very clever. Now, I think this next slide is going to start to play the minute I show it, all right? It's a collage of voices from Michigan, okay, of what's going on. And there is a trailer park that they talk about. And they say, well, 6 people have died. That was a year ago. Now 12 people have died in this trailer court where the tar sand spill flowed past. So there is no sound for the first little bit. Oil was at the residents' back doors, and what they didn't clean up, they covered up. This is made by the Michigan residents with dirt, canvas, rocks, and grass.
I don't like Enbridge.
Why don't you like Enbridge?
Because they just keep ruining other people's lives.
It's just he's a perfectly healthy child and now he's got all these problems after the oil spill.
Like they're able to do jumping jacks, they're able to do all of these exercises in gym that I just can't do because of the oil spill.
Why are we still getting sick? And they won't give me answers. Oh, it's clean, it's safe, it's this, it's that. Live here then. Tell me it's clean and it's safe. Your company says it's not harmful. But yet, like I said, I'm not going to make it to my 50th birthday. I'm 49 years old.
Did they ever try to evacuate you?
No, they said if I go outdoors to stay out no more than 5 minutes.
And he died of a seizure in the house 3 days before she died from cancer.
All right.
You know, I got 2 in 1 week at Christmas.
And did you go to the hospital and see your doctor about it?
Yeah.
And what did your doctor say?
She said that's where it came from, the smell. It affected my asthma real bad. And then they had to put me on oxygen.
My memory is absolutely shot.
And you said your lungs are really bad?
Yep, I was just diagnosed with emphysema. They said I had the lungs of an 83-year-old man.
And you were fine before that?
And I was fine before that. And that dog was healthy as a horse until that oil spill. And the other people down here have a dog, and it's been seriously sick. I think a lot of things contribute to the oil spill.
I had to give my children's father CPR myself to save his life. He had one seizure in front of the kids at home.
We've had, I believe, 6 people that have died here. We just had another person 2 days ago die at Baker Trailer Park.
I've noticed some problems with my lungs that I never had before.
Right.
You know.
And I believe that's from all the chemicals you breathe in.
Yep.
Severe headaches, nausea, fatigue, forgetfulness, all of it.
What was some of your symptoms that you had after the oil spill?
I had 3 seizures at the other house and 2 seizures where I live now.
And then my son actually had an episode where he looked like he was having seizures, passing out. I even took him to the ER.
I got migraines. I had a seizure for the first time in my life.
Grab a bag of cheese. It's okay. They're all right. All right.
Oh,
who am I?
Michelle.
The oil and gas industry, the dishonesty that these people possess and the things that they do that are detrimental to communities is almost beyond belief. And they have no compassion whatsoever. They have no honesty. They have no pride. And they're worried about the bottom line.
Dr. Mike Robichaux is a treating MD in the Gulf now. He's treating people. He's trying to do detox, decontaminate people. And as you saw, he was a U.S. Senator. The Michigan folks, I'm literally on weekly teleconferences with these folks. And the day after my birthday, the day after tomorrow, we're starting a Michigan Environmental Health Education Project to let people know about environmental health, environmental medicine. And you notice that Enbridge isn't paying for this. Michigan isn't helping. Michigan Department of Community Health released a report in June of this year saying that there was no health risk from the residual oil. They've just written it off. And the people in these trailer courts aren't buying it, you know? What can we do? So I went in, I listened, and this is what they want to do. They want to do some surveys. One more thing about the sort of the bad news here is that when this happens, this is what Not One Drops about, the social fabric of the community completely unravels. nothing I had studied prepared me for what happened after an oil spill to a community. The fear, the uncertainty, there's oil everywhere. Are you going to have to move? Are you going to live? Are you getting sick from this? When are you going to be able to fish again? Will you ever? And there's no money coming in. Or the industry creates a false economy with spill response dollars that evaporate as soon as the fall winds start, you know. This plays out as increased domestic violence and substance abuse and suicides and divorces. And when these oil companies say, we will make you whole, when I went down to Louisiana, Michigan, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, I just asked people, really? Your BP is saying this now, we will make you whole. So how much is your marriage worth? How much is it to have your husband not beat you? How much is the suicide worth? Your son's life? It's impossible to make you whole after something like this. And what it boiled down to is what Mike showed on this shame pole. Mike is an Eyak native person, a carver, and he carved here, we will make you whole, a false promise. These dollar signs are painted with his own blood. This was carved 18 years after the Exxon Valdez oil spill, and the emotions were still that hot. The big hole of our herring, no herring in Prince William Sound, and here at the bottom, how we made each other whole. It was us, it was we, the people, linking arms, doing peer listening circles, listening to where the trouble spots were, and sitting down and problem solving. How could we repair our community? It had nothing to do with the federal government, with the state, with the oil companies. It all fell on us. And you know, this is what they're not telling you. Here's sort of the whole picture. I believe we're in this together because this is about getting tar sands out to ports to go to Asia, basically, whether it's west, the Northern Gateway Project, the Keystone Project down through Texas, or they're talking about reversing some of these pipes and having an eastern extension. I believe we shouldn't be working in one area without uniting efforts in the other areas because it will push pressure to where it's weakest, right? So we all need to be united in this. So for example, well, yeah, you guys get it. We do this together. So this is just a quick story of after Exxon Valdez, it was an opportunity for us to strengthen our oil spill prevention and response laws. I mean, we already had the pipeline. We already had the tankers. But what we did was we got citizen oversight written under federal law where we actually had a say in how the oil industry did business. And we insisted on tug towing packages, and we insisted that we be trained. And we didn't have any of these things beforehand. The point of this is that I went to look, before I came here, at your national contingency plan to see what's my starting ground in Canada to talk about, right? So, okay, I hope you're ready for this. Here's your website. I went to the Ministry of the Environment, Interagency Contingency Plans, went to the National and Regional Marine Spill Contingency Plans. Under this, it says the Pacific Region Marine Spills Contingency Plan. So I clicked there, and it says, archived. This information has been archived because it has outdated and no longer relevant. Okay? And then down at the bottom of this page, it has a response plan. So I just thought, well, what the heck, I'll go there. So I went there and discovered error page. It's not found. In other words, there is no plan. There is no plan to deal. I mean, you're already piping this stuff and you have tankers. Back on the main page, if you read down a little bit further, you'll see that in Canada, like in the US, the spiller is left in charge of the cleanup. Well, then your federal government does this really cool thing. Where at least in our country, we've got the Coast Guard there as well. No, in Canada, it says the spiller's in charge. If the spiller starts doing things that harm the environment and human health, then the local community steps in. So how many of you are prepared to go respond to an oil spill?